Seriously, I mean they're 6-0. Like you said, this offense, Garrett Schrader, it's looked really good. So keep it rolling for the Qs.
Keep it rolling. Next up, Jaden Daniels balling out for the LSU Tigers. They go on the road in the Swamp and take care of the Florida Gators once again. Big win for LSU. No shoe throwing in this one, but that did not need to happen for the Tigers to run away with this one. I mean, LSU scored touchdowns on its first 6 offensive possessions. You're not going to win many football games when that's the case. So the Gators, man, they are another one to watch where it's like the rise of Tennessee and Georgia. That puts the Florida Gators in a precarious spot in the SEC East for the next couple of years. What did you make of this one, sir?
Yeah, I mean, you really got to go back to like the Ron Zook years to really the only years that Florida has really been the number 3 team behind Georgia and Tennessee. But yeah, this was just a shootout. This was a fun one to watch for a while. Jaden Daniels looked good. Some of the worst tackling I've ever seen. Like, shout out to Anthony Richardson in his athleticism. But that, like, what was like a 70-yard run he had? Mm-hmm. Like, it was, or his 81-yard run. It was the worst tackling I've ever seen, and didn't seem like any of the guys in LSU secondary had any interest in tackling him. But yeah, this is it's a first year for both of these guys, but for Billy Napier, this is first year, and like I said, going into this game, like if they pulled this out, 5-2 going into the cocktail party was about as good as you could have asked for. So that being said, 4-3 going into the cocktail party is about what you probably should have expected, on the good side of what you should expect, because they did beat Utah, and they did take Tennessee to the brink as well. So it's about all you can expect for Florida. The only thing is, for this being year one, like this has been such a generous schedule. Getting Utah at home, getting Kentucky at home, getting LSU at home, like to have like a year 2 where you see a lot of teams get like that breakthrough year, like you see Tennessee with Heupel right now in year 2. You see a lot of teams take a huge step in year 2. Like the schedule isn't going to be quite as kind next year. So I don't know. Florida still got Georgia. They still got they got to go at Texas A&M. I mean, they still have South Carolina and Florida State. So how many games is Florida losing the rest of the way? Of those, what did I say? 5 games? Yeah, they're 4-3 at this point. What of those 5 games? You got Vanderbilt, so we'll give you 6. So of those 5 of Georgia, A&M, South Carolina, and Florida State, how many of those games did they win in?
I think they're going to fight for bowl eligibility, Matt Green.
So they only need one of those to win a bowl, to get to a bowl, because the Vanderbilt win will put them at 5.
I mean, Vanderbilt, like, I think, okay, here's the thing. I don't think they're going to be favored at Florida State. I don't think they're going to be favored at A&M. I definitely don't think they're going to be favored at at Georgia in the cocktail party. I think it comes down to the South Carolina game, because I don't think they're going to win at A&M. So, and I don't think they're going to win at Florida State based on what we've seen the last couple of weeks.
A&M isn't necessarily – you just have no idea what that team is week in and week out. But It is on the road.
I mean, they lost last time they were on the road, correct? Didn't Kellen Mond – or did Kyle Trask win that game at A&M? Was that the last second win or loss? I don't remember. Was that the year? And then 2020, did they win or lose?
A&M, no. 2020, they lost to A&M. That was like that was like the second game of the season.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
And it came down to the last. Okay. That's what I thought. So they lost the last time they're there. I don't know. I would not expect to win if I'm a Gator fan on the road.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think it comes down to the South Carolina game at home. I don't know. 7-5 is best case scenario, I think, for the Gators.
I think so.
Okay for year one. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine. You got to go to a bowl game, and I think of those 5, I think they're bound to win one of them. So yeah, they just need one of those to get to a bowl. But yeah, Florida, Anthony Richardson, he's a great athlete, but we didn't see it coming into the season. And I think anyone who didn't see the Anthony Richardson hype coming into the season, this is how they saw the 2022 season going for Florida. And it was going to take him being just incredible to turn this into a team that could potentially be a contender. And if he's just going to be still such a raw work in progress, then they're going to be a team that's worried about qualifying for a bowl in the month of November.
I'm curious. I think, and I didn't mention Kentucky in this, but I think Tennessee and Georgia now, and look, I haven't said, like, Tennessee hasn't caught Georgia, but I mean, I don't know if you're keeping up with the recruiting, and Boo Carter and company. Like, the recruiting's coming, so they're going to be right there. They're in the blue chip ratio, and they'll be right there. I think Tennessee is now in that tier close to Georgia, just on offense. And then you look at, and I think the Bama win puts them there. But then you have Kentucky, who has been right there for the last couple of years, and they haven't phased. Like, big bounce back win. Like, they didn't have Levis for a loss. They had a rough loss. I mean, but it was against an undefeated Ole Miss team on the road. That's not a bad loss by any means. It was a rough way to lose. I think they're in a much more stable, just program right now than the Gators and the Gamecocks. Like, I think Florida is in a tough spot for the next couple of years. I think they might be a distant number 4 in this side of the conference for the next couple of years. And I think Florida fans need to be a little bit nervous about where this program can go, because Tennessee and Georgia have figured a lot of stuff out, obviously Georgia being the best in the division. But, like, Kentucky is not going anywhere as long as Stoops is there. Like, they're going to they've earned the benefit of the doubt that they're going to keep humming along at 9 to 10 wins a year. Just playing their smash mouth defense, running the ball when they want to, and now they get the quarterbacks every now and then with Will Levis and company. I trust the health of Kentucky's football program year over year right now way more than I do Florida and South Carolina. So I don't know. I think
it's just the ceiling is so much higher. The ceiling is just so much higher for Florida, and it's like it's same with Tennessee. Like, even when Kentucky been consistently a better program over the last 5 years or so than Tennessee, it's like they just don't get that much hype, because it's like the ceiling is like a good 10-win team. And it's like we've talked about Wisconsin kind of downgrading their 10 wins. Like, I mean, in all reality, like, that's kind of how Kentucky is getting to those 10 wins in years where Tennessee isn't very good, in years where Florida isn't very good, where you're getting Mississippi State out of the West and playing basically nobody out of conference. Like, Kentucky never play. They basically have 3 automatic wins on their schedule, and then Louisville is a program who's up and down as well. So it's like that's a difficult, not a conference game, Louisville, but it's not exactly a world beater. So it's like you have 4 pretty solid built-in wins a year just out of the conference. And like, I feel like Kentucky, as good as they've been those years, there's a reason why, yeah, they're winning 9-10 games, but people still aren't really scared of them. Like, they just don't have that ceiling. Whereas, Tennessee gets good for 1 year or 2 years, like in 2015, 2016, and they were automatically a contender and like a scarier team than Kentucky. Kentucky and Florida, when they're good, they're just better than, or when Tennessee and Florida are good, they're just significantly better than when Kentucky's good. So I know I always sound like a Kentucky hater on here, but it's just kind of what your program is. It's like the tortoise and the hare or something. Like, Kentucky just stays steady. Tennessee will have a bad year, fire their coach, take a few steps behind, but then they just start sprinting ahead and get back ahead of Kentucky. So Kentucky's fine, like, for what they are. They're a good team. They just beat Mississippi State this week. But like, yeah, they might be better than Florida, but I don't consistently see them being a better program than Florida. Like, the only way they're better than Florida is if Florida hires the wrong guy and goes down the wrong path. And it's like, maybe that's what Billy Napier is, but he's also in year 1. And this was a tough schedule. Like, even though we talked about all the games they got at home, they still had a lot of good teams in the first 7 games for a first-year head coach. Well, and first 8 games now with Georgia next game. So there's a reason Billy Napier's here, right? there was a rebuild that needed to be done with Florida. So I can't say that they're going to be a distant 4 behind Kentucky. Like, there might be years where they are 4th behind Kentucky, but I think sooner rather than later, they're going to be right in that conversation with Tennessee, with Georgia, like getting back up to the top of the SEC East. Like, maybe more like Tennessee, like this is also 1 year on Tennessee. Like, it's year 2 of Heupel, so it feels like this is just the start of, what's beginning. But we also saw year 2 of Dan Mullen, year 1 of Dan Mullen go 10-3, year 2 go 11-2, and year 3 they went to the SEC championship, even though they went 8-4, and then it went crashing down, right? So you never know. Tennessee feels like they're built on much more solid ground than what Dan Mullen was building at Florida, but time will tell. But I can't see Kentucky necessarily being that 3 ahead of Florida consistently.
I don't think so. I think Kentucky's safe. I think they're in a solid number 3 spot. I would bet on Kentucky the next 3 years, winning more games than the Florida Gators comfortably. Granted that Mark Stoops is here. I think Billy Napier feels more like a Jim McElwain to me than an Urban Meyer or a Steve Spurrier. I don't see it there yet. I'm not seeing it, and I would be pretty nervous if I'm a Florida fan right now that like Georgia has Kirby, Tennessee has the offensive whiz, best play caller in the country potentially, and Alex Golish and Josh Heupel, and then you have, Kentucky. Their identity is so strong. Like, that's the thing, is Kentucky is recruiting really well. They just had one of their best classes ever this past year, and the defense isn't going anywhere. Like, I think this style works, and they've got so many years of building it this way. Back-to-back 10-win seasons? Like, I don't see it. I don't see it crumbling anytime soon. So I think Florida's in a rough spot. I'm pretty dubious about where Florida and South Carolina are going the next couple of years, but I could be wrong.
I can't put Florida in the same conversation with South Carolina, though. It's like South Carolina, I know they had the SEC Coach of the Year last year, but they've been at the bottom of the SEC East for a while now. So like the Spurrier years are really more of like an aberration for South Carolina than like Florida. Florida's been with multiple coaches have had them be a contender. Not a lot of coaches, but they have had multiple coaches that they've had top 10 teams with. So Florida, the talent they get, the way they recruit. South Carolina, it takes a perfect storm for them to be back contending for the East. Like Florida, it's going to be much easier, I think, for Florida than South Carolina.
But more than anything, we all agree that Tennessee football is back. Speaking of